I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And here we are, I'm going to be giving my predictions for Best Picture, my January update. My last Best Picture predictions happened all the way back in October, so lots of things have changed. Going to give a little bit of an update to the predictions. A lot of my movies actually stayed the same, but my rankings of where they were in terms of their likeliness of getting nominated has changed. And because we're a month away now for the Oscars, I expect my sort of Best Picture lineup to be very similar to this. Of course, before the nominations do happen, I will be giving a full video with all my predictions right before they happen, about a month or so from now. So that will be the official one, but I still wanted to give an update on the Best Picture race just to keep you guys in touch of where we are right now. Been uploading a lot of videos twice a week, doing a lot of fun stuff with that, different types of video styles. So please comment below, let me know your thoughts on my Best Picture predictions and some of the other videos. The feedback and appreciation is always helpful. But of course, if you do like the videos, like the video, it does help. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss those sort of multiple uploads a week, aside from that sort of traditional Monday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time upload. And for this video particularly, if you want, you can check the description and jump around to hear my predictions. So if you don't want to hear why I think the Fabelmans is going to get predicted, because of course it will, you can hear maybe my 8 or 9, 10 slots, my possible contenders. Those are the ones that I know a lot of people are sort of debating with. You can use that and jump ahead. Feel free to do that. But for the hardcore people that want to hear the whole video, here are all my 10 nominees. Here we go, jumping into things. My first pick that I think is going to get nominated is the Fabelmans. Based on the fact that this was the TIFF People's Choice Award winner at the 2022 Toronto International Film Festival. And if you look at the People's Choice winner from that festival, for the past 10 years, every winner of the TIFF People's Choice Award winner has been nominated for Best Picture for 10 years in a row. That's an incredible stat. So you can go back and see the Green Books and the Rooms and all these movies that some will win Best Picture, like a Green Book, and then sometimes, movies will just get nominated. So that has positive signs for it. And then of course, Steven Spielberg, I think, is the front runner to win Best Director. So if he wins Best Director, you can probably guarantee that he's going to get nominated here for Best Picture. And all of his sort of Oscar type movies, whether it be Lincoln or The Post or Bridge of Spies or West Side Story, even last year, they have all been nominated for Best Picture. And this is a critically acclaimed movie about one of the best directors of all time, autobiographical. It's a lock to get in. Then my second pick is going to go to Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is a movie that reminds me of a Moonlight or a Coda, a sort of smaller independent movie that could take on the sort of establishment big frontrunner, in this case the sort of Steven Spielberg. So it has that kind of a vibe and sort of crowd-pleasing populist nature to it, but it's also a very creative film, so I do think it could get some technical appreciation. But regardless, it overperformed at the Critics' Choice Awards, gained the most amount of nominations with 14 nominations, so a huge success for that movie. Did pretty well in the Oscar shortlist relatively, getting into a couple categories like a score or song, so it does have some overall support. Ultimately, I do think this will be an above-the-line kind of screenplay acting kind of a movie, and it's a real contender of winning Best Picture. Then my third pick, I'm going to go with the Banshees of Inisherin. This is the one movie that I think everyone agrees upon, in the sense that everyone likes it, everyone thinks it's really good. I think it's going to perform similarly to Martin McDonagh's last film, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, an acting script kind of focused movie that does very well in terms of the nominations, gets some wins, but ultimately doesn't get that final prize. I don't think the Banshees will win. That being said, it is a very well liked and I think respected movie within many members of the Academy, and has been overperforming and doing very well. Particularly when we're talking about those acting categories, with someone like Barry Keoghan, I think could potentially get in for Best Supporting Actor, and then someone like Carrie Condon, I think, has maybe solidified herself as the only guarantee in Best Supporting Actress. Strong signs for that movie sort of early on, based on Critics' Choice and Oscar shortlists. Then in my fourth slot, I'm going to go with Top Gun Maverick, and this is a movie that is in a similar sort of a realm as a Mad Max Fury Road or a Dunkirk or even something like a Ford v Ferrari. I think it's going to be a movie that doesn't get in for screenplay, doesn't get in for, in this case, director or any actors, but it does have such an immense amount of technical appreciation that I think it will get in for picture. I mean, I don't know if all the actors or directors are going to be nominating this movie, but I do think there's going to be a strong support from the other branches of the Academy who can also vote for this movie. So the sound people are really going to like this, the cinematography, the editing. I could see it winning a lot of below-the-line support. Plus, the movie was critically appreciated. Add on to the fact that it was the big movie to essentially get everyone back to the cinema and had a huge sort of box office success, more so than anyone had ever thought. Playing in theaters for 7-8 months, pretty remarkable stuff, and I think that appreciation from Hollywood will be felt with a nomination. Then in my fifth slot, I have Tar. And this is a movie that I think some people, as we get on into the season, may sort of underestimate and go, oh, it's not performing well at the Globes or Critics' Choice. But let me tell you, this is the classic movie that will perform well at the Oscars. The Oscars usually have the more sort of prestigious taste, the art house kind of a taste. They'll nominate a movie like Drive My Car, in which Critics' Choice will, barely look at it. So there is a little bit more of a prestigious nature to the Academy and their taste, and Tar is a classic movie for that. Being complex, being sort of obtuse and difficult to parse at times, but incredibly engrossing with lots of different themes. I think the Academy in particularly will really like the movie, but plus, it's been nominated in all the right places at Critics' Choice for Picture, the Golden Globes, making some of the short lists, and just a sort of big acting powerhouse from Cate Blanchett, who I do think will win the Oscar for Best Lead Actress, and I think Tar will get nominated. I'm pretty confident in that. Then in my sixth slot, I have Elvis, which was another sort of surprise box office hit, not of the same lengths as Top Gun Maverick, but still did very well at the box office, and I think well enough to sort of have a need to celebrate the movie and to appreciate it, particularly with regards to members of the Academy. You see, the Academy loves their musical biopics. They really loved a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody. You can go all the way back to, music biopic related, like Coal Miner's Daughter or Tender Mercies in the 80s, who were very well appreciated. The Academy for years has shown us time and time again, Walk the Line, to Joaquin Phoenix, Johnny Cash, Ray. I mean, they just love their musical biopics, and Elvis seems like it has enough sort of juice and to ultimately get in for that nomination. Of course, it has that box office support, so there's a positive sign of Hollywood wanting to reward this movie in some other way. Plus, I think there's strong both above the line and below the line support. I think Elvis is going to get a lot of technical nominations. Baz Luhrmann's films often do. Let's not forget a movie like The Great Gatsby, which didn't get in for Best Picture, still won a couple of awards in the 2013 Oscars. So it has, Baz Luhrmann particularly has technical support, so it has the fans there. But then also I think actors really appreciate what Austin Butler did in his lead performance as Elvis. I think this will be a Bohemian Rhapsody type kind of a movie where it gets in for picture, it gets in for an actor, and then gets a lot of those technical nominations. Then in my seventh slot, I have Women Talking, which was a movie I think early on in the season a lot of people thought could potentially even win. And as the season has gone on, it sort of has decreased in people's rankings. And I don't think that's entirely fair, just because I think a lot of people in the general public haven't seen the movie, and because people haven't seen it, people are unsure of how people are going to respond to it. The big sort of slip up it's made at the season so far is not getting in at the Golden Globes. But let's not forget, that's a group that probably didn't see the movie. A lot of them probably didn't see the movie because it's being released later, and it's also a group that is completely different than the Academy. We're talking about 100 people on Golden Globes versus thousands in the Academy. And there's no overlap there. And I actually think the reason why people are sort of doubting Women Talking, the fact that not a lot of people have seen it, is actually the reason why I think it's going to get nominated and why I think it's going to do well. Because let's not forget, we're still a month away from Oscar voting. That means movies that we're having conversations about right now, The Whale, Babylon, they're going to sort of fade and become less interesting, versus a movie like Women Talking, which voters will be seeing right before they nominate the movie. It'll be fresh on their minds. It'll be the latest great thing they've seen, and that top of mind awareness continually sort of impresses and does well. We've seen that with movies like The Father or Phantom Thread or 1917 or even The Shape of Water, movies that were released late that sort of surprise, do well, and get a lot of nominations and surprise people because they're like, oh wow, this late breaking movie gets nominated. I think they've done a smart thing by pushing things out of the Avatar Babylon conversations, making it its own kind of a conversation. And I do think it's going to get in for screenplay and potentially multiple acting nominations and have that sort of above the line support to get it ultimately a picture nomination. Then in my eighth slot, I'm going to go with Babylon, and I've been a big Babylon believer and supporter since day one, regardless of what I think of the quality of the movie. I think this is undoubtedly an Oscar movie. I think this gets multiple nominations, including Best Picture. And I think a lot of people, when they first heard the reactions to the film and the poor kind of critical response, sort of immediately took it out of their nominations. I think that's a wrong thing to do, because let's name a few sort of critically divisive movies. Bohemian Rhapsody, 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. Don't Look Up, 58% on Rotten Tomatoes. Joker, 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. All those movies got nominated for Best Picture. Those guys won multiple Oscars. These are sort of critically divisive movies that still get in at Best Picture at the Oscars. Why? Because they have their fans. They're divisive. Some people really love the movie and some people really hate the movie. But how Best Picture nominations voting works is that people actually rank their choices. Even for nominations, all members of the Academy, the actors will nominate the acting categories, but in terms of Best Picture, all the groups, all the branches of the Academy nominate Best Picture. So if you have someone that really loves Babylon, they're going to put it 1, 2. That will be enough sort of strong, high value kind of a votes that will push over the edge to give it a nomination. Even if some people are leaving it off their ballot entirely, it has enough sort of passionate fan base, I think, because divisive movies actually helps to be divisive, because we've seen these movies like Bohemian Rhapsody with poor critical responses, or Don't Look Up, still do well at the Oscars, in part because of that divisiveness. And I think Babylon is the latest example of that. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, this is a movie, an ambitious movie from a past director winner recently in Damien Chazelle. It's got movie stars. It's a movie about Hollywood. It's all the things that will particularly appeal to the Hollywood sort of members of the Academy and that kind of a branch, and those kind of people who appreciate those stories about movies. We see it every year. Some sort of movie about movies will get nominated. I think Babylon, because of its sort of technical appreciation and mastery there, but then also its sort of passionate love from some members of the Academy, I think will ultimately be enough to push it over the edge. And I actually do think, I'm pretty confident Babylon gets in for Best Picture. I think if you're sort of reacting to the craziness, let's not forget that critical reviews aren't everything, and oftentimes there's a critically reviled movie that still gets nominated for Best Picture. Let's not forget about that. Then in my 9th slot, I'm going to go with Avatar: The Way of Water, the mysterious movie that we weren't sure about all year. But if you go back to my original October Best Picture predictions, I had Avatar in them because I didn't want to bet against James Cameron. And guess what? I didn't bet against James Cameron, and I think he's going to get nominated. The movie has made over $1 billion in 2 weeks. It's done very well at the box office. People are really going out to see it. The critical reviews, aren't as great as, say, a movie like Top Gun, which is why I have it a little bit lower here. But that being said, it still has an A cinema score, so people who are watching it, the audiences, are still appreciating it. And ultimately, I do think this will follow a similar path to Top Gun, or historically Ford v Ferrari, or Mad Max Fury Road, in the sense that I think James Cameron will get nominated for Best Director. I don't think any of the actors will get nominated. I don't think it's going to be a movie that gets nominated for screenplay, but director, it could definitely get in, and then a lot of technical support. People are blown away by the visual effects and the production design and the sound, in the same way they were of the first movie. I think James Cameron will be appreciated with that, and let's not forget, he hasn't made a movie in 13 years. He very rarely makes movies, and I think the sort of power of James Cameron and the respect that he commands in Hollywood, plus a huge success of the film in terms of box office and the technical marvel, will be enough, particularly within these 10 categories. You have to nominate 10 movies, whereas before you could have nominated 8 or 9. There has to be 10 movies to be nominated for Best Picture. Avatar is that sort of big box office technical marvel that can still sneak in because of the appreciation of James Cameron and the success of the movie at the box office and this late release. It's on top of people's minds. And then in my 10th slot, I'm going to go with All Quiet on the Western Front. Because for me, you have to look at this final slot, this 10th slot, which is always very difficult to do. You have to look at it in 2 ways. You're either going to nominate a movie that has above the line support, or nominate a movie with below the line support. Because it's easy to say Everything Everywhere All at Once is going to get in for picture, because you're predicting it to get in for screenplay and all these acting categories. The same thing with something like Elvis. You're predicting it in all these other categories. Of course, you're going to predict it for Best Picture too. But what's difficult about this sort of 10th final slot is you can go in so many different ways. So it's 2 ways, essentially. Either it's an above the line movie in the case of, say, The Post, which was that, if you remember that movie from 2017, Steven Spielberg, Meryl Streep got nominated for Best Lead Actress, and the movie got nominated for Best Picture. 2 nominations, that's it. But it was an above the line, actor, director, screenplay, kind of an appreciated movie. So that could be a situation. Or you believe it's a technical appreciation. So if you look at last year with Nightmare Alley, that got in for production design and cinematography, and then ultimately got in for picture. There was an appreciation of the technical craft that got it in for picture. So where are you going to go? Are you going to go above the line or are you going to go below the line support? For me, I'm going to go with a below the line support. And All Quiet on the Western Front has the best chance of doing that. Right now, I think it's competitive in 5 to 7 categories. It can get in for production design and cinematography and editing and sound and maybe visual effects and maybe makeup and hairstyling too. And then who knows about even something like a screenplay and then a picture. It could be a huge, well-nominated movie. And for me, this sort of revelation over the past few years, last 3-4 years of the Academy, is how the international members of the Academy really sway things. And All Quiet on the Western Front is a German production. It's a big budget, sort of outside of Hollywood production. I think the Europeans that are members of the Academy will appreciate that and want to sort of get one of their own in, and will appreciate that even more so than, say, the Critics' Choice Awards did. Let's not forget, Drive My Car International movie got nominated at the Oscars and didn't really get nominated anywhere else because of that international branch sort of flexing their influence in the same way they flexed their influence and gave Parasite the Best Picture win. But ultimately, there comes a point. If you're predicting All Quiet on the Western Front to get in for editing and international feature and sound and cinematography, how many nominations do you think it's going to get without getting a Best Picture nomination? Listen, it happens sometimes. A movie like Carol will get nominated for 6 nominations and then won't get in for Best Picture, but that's rare. Most of the time, if you get 4, 5 nominations, your next nomination is Best Picture. And I think it's very realistic for All Quiet on the Western Front to get in for editing, to get in for cinematography, to get in for sound, and to get in for Best International Feature. So if you think it's going to get for 4 nominations, maybe 5 nominations, then why not Best Picture? Right now I have it in those categories, so why not Best Picture? I think the international branch of the Academy will favor this movie. I think it has a strong sort of positive reputation. It has Netflix behind it, who has done very well with campaigning, getting multiple movies in for Best Picture each year in the past 5 years. And right now I'm going for that technical appreciation of All Quiet on the Western Front. Will push it over the edge to get in for picture. Then, in my possible contenders, my first one is going to be Glass Onion, a Knives Out story. Another Netflix movie that they've also been pushing along with All Quiet on the Western Front. But while All Quiet on the Western Front is a technical appreciation movie, Glass Onion is a above-the-line appreciation movie. This is a movie that will get in for screenplay, maybe Janelle Monáe for supporting actress, and then could get in for picture because that's sort of above-the-line support. But for me right now, I don't have Janelle Monáe in for my Best Supporting Actress predictions. I don't have it in for Best Production Design. I don't have it in for Best Score. So right now, I only have it in for Best Screenplay. So do I really think it's going to get in for Screenplay and Picture? If I think that, then why don't I think a movie like Living will get in? Because that gets Screenplay, Actor, and Picture. What about The Whale, which could have 2 acting nominations and Picture and Director, and Picture, excuse me? Why don't I have those movies instead? That's why ultimately I left Glass Onion out, because it didn't make as much sense to favor this movie over, say, other movies. And let's not forget, Knives Out didn't get nominated for Best Picture. And this is a sequel, and the Academy usually historically doesn't appreciate sequels. So it's hard to tell exactly, but because it's still, it's not the same cast except for Daniel Craig, it doesn't really feel like a sequel. It feels prescient, it's very funny, it's releasing late, it has a high popular approval rating. I do think that Glass Onion still is a major contender if the Academy does the sort of above-the-line support, but it's on the outside right now. And then my other possible contender is Triangle of Sadness. And I talked about All Quiet on the Western Front and the appreciation of the international branch of the Academy. But hey, let's not forget, Triangle of Sadness could also have that international branch of the Academy support, because while the movie is in English, Ruben Östlund is the filmmaker behind it, and his past movies, The Square and Force Majeure, were not in the English language and did well. And he's seen as a European director. Triangle of Sadness won the Palme d'Or, his second Palme d'Or. So there is an appreciation of the European kind of branch of the Academy, really sort of banging behind Ruben Östlund, even though his film is in English. So if that group really shows up and really likes the movie, which they clearly do, that could be enough to push it over the edge. And Dolly De Leon could get in for supporting actress. I think the film's going to get in for screenplay. That could totally happen. I could totally see that happening. But ultimately, just historically, it's a movie that seems a little bit too cynical and dark for the Academy's taste, that I don't know if everyone, particularly American members of the Academy, will like it enough to push it over the edge. Maybe a little bit too weird, a little bit too eccentric, and I think a little bit too cynical for their taste, a little bit too European in its kind of filmmaking versus traditional Hollywood American, which they've traditionally really well appreciated and felt connected to. So hard to say exactly what, but it still is a possible contender for sure. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on my best picture update for January. I'd love to hear your predictions in the comments down below. That's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.